All right, and we are live on air again.
Woo!
Yeah, and in the morning too. This is always so great in the morning.
Yeah, it's like mid-morning where I am, so it's not too bad.
Oh, that's true. I guess you've got the whole time zone situation. In all fairness, I was just sharing with you. I'm recovering from a night of spooky fun at a murder mystery. By the way, this live stream is brought to us by Sweet Mild Orange Tea, probably Kroger
Oh,
brand. Um, it's not very good, but it is what I'm drinking. So here's to you, Sweet Mild Orange Tea.
gotta give a shout out to lemon ginger tea. It's one of the British brands.
Oh, snap. Wait, it's ginger tea that's a British brand?
Lemon ginger.
Yes,
It's
lemon
my favorite.
ginger, native to the UK.
Exactly.
Queen's ginger. All right. Here we go. That is the most British thing I've ever heard from that standpoint, actually. That makes sense. All right, shall we jump into
There
it?
you go. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Broadcasting glorious purpose across the interdimensional airways. This is Bo, aka Loki variant HTJM84.
And Lorraine, aka Loki variant RVJM91.
And you are tuned in to the most mischievous show on the multiverse, where we are talking all things Loki. This episode 4 of season 2. But first, Lorraine, can you double check your microphone, make sure it's coming through on the right thing?
Can you hear it? You're not hearing the tapping?
Well, I didn't hear the tapping, but it is coming through a little mechanical, so I thought, well, let's just double check first before we get too deep into it. Y'all, it's tech supporting on the fly. That's what we do for a live broadcast. Mischievous. I got nothing clever, but I can tell you that while Lorraine is doing a quick tech support, quick troubleshooting, that that's what we're all about here. I got nothing.
That's right. It says it's on my mic.
Okay, all right. If it is, it is. If it is, it is. The mic is a little sketch. Oh, okay. No, that came through.
Okay.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah. All right. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. It'll be good. All right. Shall we? Let's see. Lorraine. All right. You ready to get back into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. Lorraine, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I watched the episode last night. As soon as it ended, I immediately started watching it again because my mind was blown.
Yes, a lot of
So,
a lot of things were blown at the end of that at the end of that episode. I'm so very excited because of course you are about to be in town. We're just days away from Halloween. Have you got your Halloween costume all picked out and ready to go?
yes, I'm going to be Evil Kermit.
Oh, you mean Constantine from Muppets Most Wanted?
Yes, originally I put it on because I was going to be Kermit dressed as the Count,
Oh.
like Kermit in disguise. But when I put it on, I was like, wait, I look just like Evil Kermit. So that's a way better costume.
It's so interesting because like I saw that I knew instantly who you were. I mean, and mostly because my kids are like super into Muppets Most Wanted. But I realized to like the vast majority of people over the age of 10, like they know it as the evil Kermit meme more so than the actual
Exactly.
character from the movie.
I actually forgot where the character came from. So when you said Muppets Most Wanted, I was like, oh, I should probably rewatch it to be able to fully express the character.
That's true. You should know like what the character stands for. You might be making a vastly
Oh no.
inappropriate commentary with this Russian spy that you've decided to dress up
Okay,
as.
well, worst case scenario, I am Kermit dressed as the Count.
There you go. We'll go with that if needed. But no, I think it's great. I think it's great. I'm in a bit of a bind because I had my costume all picked out. I was going to be Luffy from One Piece, and now we are tracking for like 50 to 40 degree weather
Oh yeah.
on Halloween night in Houston, Texas, which I was not prepared for. So I cannot be rocking a Luffy costume in that kind of weather, sitting out on the front patio, front porch, and handing out candy. So Gonna have to go back to the drawing board, but I will probably be some kind of pirate. I would go as Loki, except I'm saving all that for Crew of Loki. But
Yeah, I thought about it as well, but no, I've gotta reinvent myself next year as Sylvie.
there you go. Well, we want all of you who are going as Loki this year to be sure to take some selfies. Tweet them into us. You can tweet them into at TV Talk FM. Send them into at TV Talk FM. Or if you're on Instagram, send them to at Crew of Loki, and we will make you an honorary Loki at least for a day and share that out. So be sure to do that. Hope y'all have some spooky fun for Halloween. But right now we've got some TV to talk. Lorraine, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's get into the Rundown. Episode 4 of Season 2, Heart of the TVA, directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Lorraine, what happened this episode?
Miss Minutes reveals that Renslayer was once He Who Remains' partner and commander of his army before He Who Remains ordered her memories erased along with everyone else's. As the temporal loom reaches catastrophic failure, Loki and his allies attempt to use Timely and OB's throughput multiplier to fix it, but Renslayer, Miss Minutes, and Wolf attempt to thwart them to take the TVA for themselves, kidnapping Timely, pruning D90, and killing Dox and her men when they refuse to join them. In the midst of the conflict, Loki encounters his time-slipping self and prunes him. Opie deactivates Miss Minutes, and the dampeners prevent Sylvie from using her magic, enabling Sylvie to enchant Wolf, who prunes Renslayer. Timely is able to unlock the temporal loom, but the temporal radiation disintegrates him before he can launch the throughput multiplier. The temporal loom explodes, and everyone is engulfed in the blast wave as it spreads throughout the TVA.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, Loki. So, kind of a big ending, kind of a mic drop moment at the end where literally it fades to black and you're left with literal nothingness. I don't know about you. I stayed all the way to the credits hoping there would be kind of like the Loki variants or something that we had the last season. Nothing.
Exact same thing. I even after the screen goes tiny, we clicked on the screen because I was like, no, what if there's more? What if there's more? And they just really want to hide it from us, and there was nothing.
Nope, it was gone. It was gone. Everything's gone. Everything's gone. As you as you're kind of left with this, it leaves you with the sense of what did I just see? It makes total sense that you went back and rewatched it a second time. Had I had the option, I probably would have. But I've had some chances this morning to kind of marinate on everything. And one of the things that I've really appreciated about this season is the way in which they are doing things with the kind of sci-fi, 90s cult, 80s corporate structure, all of these different things, right? All of these different very modern Western, and then also very high cosmic sci-fi, or at least retro sci-fi, in the way in which they're kind of, playing around with this universe. And yet they've tied it into elements of Norse mythology. If at least it's there, if you choose to see it. And I think that you got to do that with Loki. You're dealing with the god of mischief. You're dealing with a character who is deeply tied to, Marvel's take on Thor and Odin and all of these Norse gods and that sort of thing. And so to take the character of Loki and put him in a setting that's so very different is humorous in season 1. But now that he's so comfortable here in season 2, the other elements kind of need to bleed in here and there. And I've got some thoughts about the way that all plays out. We're going to talk about it kind of throughout this episode. But one of the main things that we get a chance to see this week is the debate that takes place between Loki and Sylvie as they are discussing, what is right. From this standpoint, the timelines are overloading the loom. Decisions need to be made. Who's going to live? Who's going to die? Who's going to tell the story? Sylvie denies this concept, says that we're not gods. Loki's like, we actually very much and very specifically are gods. But are they gods of order or gods of chaos, right?
That's the question.
Because, of course, Loki is very much like the god of mischief. He is, the god of chaos, theoretically. And yet, here we see him lording over chaos, or not really lording over chaos, but looking over chaos and desiring to create order. So maybe in that way, it's kind of like a a recharacterization of the concept of a god of mischief or a god of chaos is that he manages the chaos. It's organized chaos, if you will, under the watchful eyes of our Lord and Savior, Loki.
So, what I noticed when he told Sylvie, "We are gods," he seemed disappointed. Like, I was wondering why he delivered the line, "We are gods," like kind of sad. Like, is he sad about himself because he's like, "I'm technically the god of mischief, but I've totally switched a flip here, and I'm all about this order thing. Like, have I
Interesting.
changed? I don't know."
I,
Or could it be that this variant of Loki is not the god of mischief, it's the god of order?
so, okay. I don't know. I rewatched that after you said that he seemed sad. I don't get sad out of that. I think that what we get is Loki with like a level of gravity behind that line, some levity behind that, like with the realization of okay, let me put it like this: Loki is on the same journey that Thor was on in the first Thor movie, right? Loki even like references in that in like, he goes to Midgard, he comes back, he's different. Think about who Thor was in the first Thor film. Like, he was like, brash and like, I'm like, look at me, big ups to me, I'm going to be king. And, he's, Odin is about to like make him king and everything else. And he's like twirling around his hammer and he's like, oh yeah, I'm Thor. I'm going to create war. I'm going to go and, fight the frost giants and kick off a whole nother, world's war situation. And all of this is from a Thor who doesn't understand what it truly means to be king. He doesn't understand what a Thor is who truly understands what it means to rule. And so Odin is disgusted by this. He banishes him and he sends him away until he is worthy enough to come back. And if you think about Thor's journey throughout all of the MCU, or at least all of the kind of Infinity Saga, it is about Thor learning what it means to be humble, to be king, right? And I mean, like, admittedly, when it's all said and done, you get to all the way to Endgame, and he is the most humble, the most broken he ever has been. And then ultimately, he ends up passing the throne to someone else, to Valkyrie, right? Like, so, like, ultimately, even when we see him at the end of Ragnarok, when he's sitting on the phone and we see him over his people, he's lost his kingdom, but he recognizes the value of his kingdom as his people. But then he's broken down even further and loses them. And so anyway, you think about what Thor's journey was. It was about learning what it means, learning what it means to be king, and ultimately becoming his father, even to the point of losing an eye. With Loki, Loki has wanted to be God King. Ever like that whole thing with him coming to Midgard, he wanted to come to Midgard. He wanted to rule. He wanted to conquer. He wanted to be seen as the god of Midgard, right? Like, this is his, brazen thing. He's filled with glorious purpose. They were all made to be ruled. He's got this whole mindset of what it means to be a god and to subjugate your followers and to have them grovel before you. What we've seen in this variance journey, as he's plucked out of that moment in time, he hasn't had any of the rest of the journey of the other Loki, of our prime Loki. This one, it was literally plucked right out of that mindset. And so what is he learning throughout the course of all this is the weight of what it means to be a god king. The language he even uses, you can't just give people free will and leave them at that. It's a recognition that to like create or to end up in this kind of creator role and grant your creation full-fledged free will and let them run amok is to be a absentee parent and to be a god that doesn't care. He understands the weight. He's understanding the weight of what it actually is to be God and to be a God king. And so I think that's when he says that, we are gods. I don't necessarily see that as a sadness of like, oh, I used to be the god of mischief and now I'm the god of order. I see it as he understands maybe for the first time the weight of everything he ever said he wanted. He now has, but he understands it. You know what I mean?
Yes, that makes perfect sense to me.
This is my thought. This is my theory. And so I'm cannot wait to see where everything is going. Of course, this is all, nothing matters anymore because everything's destroyed. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
let's just like we're gonna talk about this episode as if the end didn't happen until we need to talk about the end. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, it's like nothing matters. Everything is pointless.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Judge Renslayer, we've been talking about how she wants to be She Who Remains. And in this, we do get the revelation. And I believe you called it last week that she was there at the beginning, that she was actually kind of the original Eve to, He Who Remains Adam, and was, at the creation of the TVA. It sounds like she's not alone either.
Yeah, I really thought she created the whole thing though, but it sounds like her primary role was leading the army. So she played a different role, but she was there from the beginning.
Well, it's interesting, right? So the concept that she was the leader of the army during the multiversal war implies that the multiversal war, at least the one that predated this existence, this iteration of the sacred timeline, the Kangs, or at least He Who Remains anyway, was not just operating on his own, but he was able to raise up some kind of army of followers from who knows where, maybe from variants across the various timelines or something of that nature. It does make me wonder if when we ultimately go up against Kang or the Council of Kangs, are we just going up against Kangs, or do each one have their own acolytes and followers? You see what I'm saying? Because if she's not a Kang variant, that means that Kangs are going to be recruiting.
Yes. So when He Who Remains says to Miss Minutes, wipe all their memories, is he talking about his army? Is he talking about the TVA?
I have a feeling that all
staff,
yeah,
are they the same?
I think it's everyone. I think the idea is that they were all part of establishing this. I mean, you think about Obi, right? Like the whole concept between Obi seems to know, right? Like he seems to be the only one that has some concept of memory of what came before. But even then, you got to wonder, to what extent is that limited? Or is it limited? He remembers Victor Timely.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he remembers Victor Timely, who helped write the TVA handbook. Maybe when Miss Minutes rewrote everybody's memory, she didn't do Obi's because Obi was, kind of deep in the bowels of the TVA. He was in the heart of the TVA.
Or maybe he's not a real person, so she couldn't wipe his memories.
I mean, I'm still on that. I think that's the LMD Obi theory. I dig that. I'm still kind of in that mindset as well.
I'm sticking with it.
I think it's good. I think that's definitely good. But no, I think
he really did learn everything he needed to know from Victor Timely because he created him.
Well, and so therein lies the whole thing, right? So we're introduced to the Obi specifically calling out the snake eating its tail, which is a reference to his name. All of this is kind of tied to this, everything handing off. And we saw everything hand off in this episode. We got a callback to the recording that Loki saw when he was time slipping before, or heard when he was time slipping before. We got the moment that he was pruned. And we saw specifically that was, in fact, as most everybody guessed when they first saw it, it was Loki pruning himself. The phone call, the ominous phone call, in a very Disney Plus Marvel bait and switch. It's just Obi wondering where everybody is.
I was so disappointed. I was like, oh, it's the phone call. We're about to see. It's just, hey, what's taking you guys so long? What?
Yeah. No. It's Quicksilver all over again. It's just oh, you thought that was going to be a big deal. It's not a big deal. They got to put at least one. I think it's brilliant. You got to put at least one bait and switch situation in there, and the phone call is a great way to do it. So we get all of those. I believe all of the loops have been fulfilled. Everything that has come to be. And the paradoxes are all tightly in a loop, except for one massive, massive exception, which is, of course, we need Victor Timely to create the TVA, and if he doesn't exist, he can't do that. So we'll talk about that in a second. So we get all of this, right? We get the snake eating its tail. And this episode kind of begs the question, what happens when the snake gets to the end? You know what I mean? And what ends up happening when there's no more tail to consume? But in Loki fashion, I've got to give a kind of a connection with actual Norse mythology here, because I've been thinking about it from the standpoint of, again, you've got two things. You've got the MCU elements of Loki understanding what it means to be the God King that he always wanted to be. But then there's all these different elements where they're playing around with their take on Norse mythology. And I'm starting to wonder, given the like heavy leaning on the imagery of a snake eating its tail that we've gotten since the beginning, I'm wondering if that could to some extent be a reference to, okay, let me see if I can say the name right. Yomengander? Yomengander? Yomengander. You don't know about Yomengander?
Yeah, I don't.
It's Loki's son. The world serpent that surrounds the world. So this is my sorry. This is like Norse mythology, right? Norse mythology, like Greek mythology, you have like Atlas holding up the world, right? So in a lot of mythological understandings of the universe, there's kind of this question of what keeps the world all together. And so there's this mindset of like, okay, well, there must be some sort of deity that holds up the world either in the cosmos or just kind of keeps all of reality tight and fixed. And so Yomengander is the Norse take on that. It is this literal large world serpent that surrounds the world and keeps it all together. And so something about this idea of a large snake in this cyclical fashion that is holding everything together did kind of remind me of this notion of a snake eating its tail. So with Yomengander being not just a Norse character of Norse mythology and this kind of circular snake that is keeping everything together, but also the son of Loki, he's the father of Yomengander, I got to wonder if there might be some kind of nod to that. I might be reaching, but I don't think that I am.
So then OB is a nod to Yomengander?
OB, okay, this is going to be an early stab in the dark. I'm just going to throw it out there. What if OB was created by Loki? What if Loki is actually responsible for the creation of OB? So OB is, for all intents and purposes, the Yomengander of this universe that was, or maybe one day will become. I don't know. And I don't mean like,
Loki,
again, I'm still in the LMD stamp like mindset, but like maybe they like, again, it's the creation of Yomengander.
Yeah, like as in he's his son, or Loki has by magical powers created him.
It could be magical powers. It could be technology. It could be anything. There's different takes in the God of War video game franchise. They do kind of a unique take on Loki creating Yomengander by putting the soul of a giant into the soul of a dead giant into this snake, and then the snake grows exponentially and becomes Yomengander. So the idea is that he's like kind of a spiritual father to Yomengander. I think in Greek mythology, it's more like, Loki A, turned into a lot of animals, and B, had intimate relation with a lot of animals. So there's a lot of that going on. There's some kind of Zeus style getting around from that standpoint. And to be fair, I can't quite remember at the moment who Yomengander's mother was. So, and it's also possible that Loki was the mother of Yomengander, now that I think about it. Because he was the mother of a couple of different creatures. Because again, shapeshifter goes both ways. So from that standpoint, but I do think he was the father of Yomengander, with possibly Yomengander's mother being the mother of giants, which Sylvie? It might be a stretch. It might be a stretch.
It might be, but I mean, the snake thing, there's his name literally means a snake eating itself. It talks about a snake eating itself. And it sounds like the snake keeps the world going round. So you could be onto something there.
I think I am. Hey, speaking of on something, Miss Minutes, we want to talk about what's going on with Miss Minutes, because like when she was watching the Judge and the Minutemen all getting cubified, ooh.
That was the most disturbing scene I have seen in a very long time. Definitely in the MCU.
I was awful. I'm glad that like it was a good move not showing us what they
Yes.
were
Oh my
looking at,
goodness.
because the horror on everybody else's face and the delight on Miss Minutes' face, I feel like is so much more disturbing than
Yes.
whatever we
I've
could have
got a
seen otherwise.
picture of Miss Minutes' face doing that on my phone, and I'm just like, there's nothing scarier than this face. And I was like, are they they're going out of their way to show us Miss Minutes is evil. So it's like, why is she so evil? Is it because of Kang?
Or, I mean, is it what happens when you create AI with free will and let it go on about its way without any kind of, parental control?
An AI who can also wipe everyone's memory.
Yes. Yes. That too. Very, very dangerous. But yeah, I don't know. That's it's a good question. But no,
It's really
Miss Minutes
just
is
a
like,
cautionary tale about the dangers of AI.
well, or again, it could also be that she's the embodiment. Maybe she's the lesson that Sylvie will learn, that this is what happens when you give something free will and you give them no parameters or no boundaries or no control, is they end up becoming, a psychopathic holographic clock. Like, this is not, is this really what you want for the timeline, Sylvie?
Yeah, this is your legacy. It's Miss Minutes just being like, ooh, yay.
By the way, did you get the sense that Timely had his own kind of secret agenda throughout all of this?
Yeah, off and on. Like when he went to the hot chocolate stand and he was holding it up, I was like, oh, he's about to take the stick. And he snaps his fingers and I was like, the stick is gone. But it was because X5 had taken it. But I don't know. I kind of went back and forth between like, oh, he's just like an innocent man who's just like really geeking out over the TVA to, oh, this guy is undercover and something bad's about to happen. And I couldn't really decide. And then at the end, I still don't really know. But I think he was just Victor Timely from a branched timeline who got himself in an unfortunate position.
Okay, I've got a theory that it's not fully baked out. I've got kind of a stab in the dark that I'm going to throw in right now. And I've been thinking about this. So two things. One, Timely, like the fact that he snapped right when he went, it was very reminiscent of He Who Remains knowing exactly what was going to happen. You know what I mean? Like he was able to dodge this, that, and the other because everything was scripted. Everything that happened, he knew exactly what was going to happen. And then it did happen. And it was, a whole thing. I have a theory that is, again, not fully baked out. I need to go back and rewatch a few things to kind of add to this or to debunk it. But what if, all right, so you know the infinity symbol, right? Like the eight, the twirling in. There's two sides of that. What if He Who Remains is one side and the other side is Obi? And what if Victor Timely, or the Kang variant that we meet on the sacred timeline, the young one, I'm kind of building off my theory from last week. What if that child was dropped there and another child was taken away from that point in the timeline? And what if that other child that was taken away from the timeline is a young Obi? So this is different from the Obis and LMD. This is a totally different theory, okay? And this one, the mindset is they both take turns kind of being the head of the TVA, right? And so Victor Timely left in this time in Chicago with Obi's parents and everything else. Like he's in that's where he's at. And he also has this book that was written by Obi. And eventually, let's just say something happened that reset everything. Let's just say that. Let's just say that something like that could happen. Then Obi would be placed in Victor's timeline. Okay, all right, never mind. You know what? I'm going a little cross-eyed on this one. It's a theory that I haven't fully baked out yet. But my thought is that perhaps Victor Timely is a Kang variant who took Obi's life in Chicago 1900s and lived it.
and Obi got
And
thrown into a different timeline.
and at the end of time, once we're ready for like a reset, that Obi will become the new He Who Remains. And perhaps Timely becomes the new Obi. Maybe. I don't know. This is just, again, it's not a fully baked out theory. It's just, there's something about the way in which these two gentlemen, like, they recognize each other, they see each other. It reminded me a lot, actually, of, did you ever watch Westworld?
No.
Okay. Are you familiar with the concept?
But I know of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Westworld, the theme park, robots, the idea is you go in and, all of these adventures are happening and you can kind of engage with all the robots and everything else. And there's different stories. You're basically living a video game. The robots are on story loops and you can go and kind of like play out that story and then go find another robot and then play out that story, that sort of thing, like side quests in a video game. Well, in season 2 of Westworld, we come to discover that Westworld is only one of many theme parks that are all owned by this large conglomerate or this large kind of, Disney-ish organization that manages all these different theme parks. Another one is Shogun World. And in Shogun World, they actually, when they're kind of running away and trying to hide out away from Westworld, they end up in Shogun World. But they find that a lot of the characters, while they're all samurai, are very similar to the characters that they had in Westworld. They actually have one of the writers with them who points out he kind of copied a lot of the stories and just pasted them into what Shogun World is. So instead of like, a cowboy in a black hat knocking over a saloon, it's like these, like samurai, like rogue samurai coming in to take out the tea house and steal like, it's like the exact same scene beat for beat. And you even have characters from Westworld meeting their Shogun counterpart and almost mirroring each other. And so I was thinking about that as we saw like Obi and Victor wanting to exchange books and kind of the way in which they were kind of posturing around each other just seemed like whatever it was that was connecting them might be a mirroring of two sides of the same coin.
That is interesting. That makes me think of something that I noticed in a couple of episodes is this, like the framing, how like 1 or 2 episodes ago, X5 is laying down and he sees everything upside down and then the camera flips it right side up. And then in this episode, when they were all standing in that orange room, you could see their reflection on the ceiling. So it kind of gave me that same vibe of like the upside down or whatever, but it's like
Dark
the same thing
reflections.
going on. Like, yeah, like the reflection of it. So I don't know if that maybe is symbolic of that, but that did make me think of that.
It could. It very well could. I did get some vibes of when Casey and Obi and Victor were all working on the device together. It reminded me of something you said last week about how like perhaps the 3 timekeepers are 3 of the characters from this season.
Yes. And I was thinking about how most of the people that work at the TVA are just X5 or B15 or whatever, but then only a few actually have names. We've got Casey, Mobius, Ouroboros. Who else has a name?
Everybody that's not a hunter, right? Because all the hunters have kind of codes and everybody else has a name. So is it possible? Well, I was going to say maybe. No. I was going to say maybe only the hunters are variants and everybody else is more of an original creation. I mean, they are putting like a lot of weight on the concept of Mobius. Like, why haven't you checked on who your person is? But we know for a fact that, we know for a fact that Renslayer has a variant or is a variant, and yet we also know that she used to be a hunter, because at the beginning, like the flashback at the beginning of the episode, she was wearing hunter garb, and I think her like tag was A something, A20 something. Or A40 something. I can't remember. Anyway, the point is that like she was a hunter. So maybe it has to do with if you're a hunter, you're a variant, everybody else is not. And Renslayer is more of like she actually is a variant, but she's been posturing like she's not. I don't know. I'm reaching.
Another thing that I noticed on my second rewatch is when Victor Timely is looking at the art and has all the timekeepers and all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
On the right, panel of that, it's the 3 timekeepers, and then it looks like a bunch of people being crushed. And I was like, is that supposed to be all the people getting crushed in that orange room? And then the 3 timekeepers, which in this scenario would be Renslayer and Miss Minutes and X5.
Wow. Okay, interesting.
I don't know, but I was like, because the people do look like they're being crushed.
Yeah, we might need to study that artwork a little bit closer. That's good. That's a good catch. Other than I felt like overall, like Hunter B15 hasn't really had a lot to do this season. Like I feel like she's been around to be a little judgmental on like what we can't kill people. We can't kill people, and then it's like I don't know what we need to do. Like, you know what I mean? She hasn't had much of an arc. Casey, I was surprised Casey was even going to have like as much of an arc as he has, which is barely anything. But I just was surprised that he was coming back. Mobius didn't really have anything to do other than contemplate his own existence. Sylvie, I feel like she didn't have as much to do with this episode. We did get a return of some of the judges, or at least one of the judges. Well, no, we got a return of the other 2 judges. I guess there's still the one that was asleep. He's probably asleep somewhere. In this, and we got a better opportunity to see that, like, okay, no, the TVA holistically, B15 has been able to kind of convert some people over to the mindset of like, okay, the timekeepers, so to speak, were, our gods are dead, but beyond that, like, they were wrong in the first place, and we need to figure out a way so that we can manage these timelines to allow them to exist. And so her off-screen, I always hate it when characters have development off screen, but her off screen motivations of the judges has actually brought at least one of them over to this mindset. And then with the one that I thought was Sylvie, but I'm starting to think is not Sylvie, that died this week.
Docs.
I'm kind of a little confused about her about face, because she was all about wiping out the branches, and then they're trying to fix things, but then she doesn't want to fix things. So like, what is, I couldn't figure out by the end of this, like, what exactly is her motivation that she's so willing to die for?
She switched real quick. It was like, oh, once I realized that Miss Minutes and Renslayer are actually evil because they're going to kill us all, I think I'll be on the right side of history. But it was real quick.
You got to have history in order to be on the right side of it, and we definitely don't have that.
Wow. I'm still so confused though about the relationship between Brad, who she calls Bradley, and Docs. I'm like, what happened here that they have this like total, like, it just seems so mother-son or something special. But I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm very eager to like there's just so many different answers that are they're coming eventually, one imagines, as long as existence exists.
I hope. I think the ultimate answer is none of it matters. So
none of it matters. And you know what? None of it matters. And I think that's going to bring us to this week's Taylor Watch.
Wow.
Okay, all right. For real though. There's no Taylor in this week's episode, but she was seen with the director of Deadpool 3, apparently.
Yes, she was spotted out in New York this week with the director of Deadpool 3, sparking rumors that she will make an appearance in Deadpool 3.
And if she can make
my guess,
go ahead.
My guess is she will not be in Deadpool 3, but she will write a song that will be in the credits of Deadpool 3.
Oh, that would be hilarious. Celine Dion made a song for Deadpool 2, and it is a beautiful song. Have you heard
maybe
it?
Like Deadpool, probably. Is it when he
come
dies?
Out of ashes, let beauty come out of ashes. And when I pray to God, all I ask is, let beauty come out of ashes. You haven't heard it? You still haven't heard it, actually.
It doesn't ring a bell, but if Taylor Swift writes a song for Deadpool 3, I will know that one pretty well. Could even get an Oscar nom. Who knows? She's really been trying to get that Oscar nom. So
she didn't get it for Cats.
Actually, I think she did get an Oscar nom for Cats.
I'm pretty sure she did. It's of all the. It was the best. Her song was the best part of Cats. So.
Did you see it?
Yes.
I did too. I saw it in
It's a
theaters.
definitive Halloween movie for us now because of how terrifying it is. We haven't watched it this year, so maybe we'll watch it when you're over here.
Wonderful.
The girls, like my kids, have been asking to watch Cats, and I'm like, no, I don't want you to have nightmares. But I don't know, maybe they're old enough now. All right, well there you go. That's your Taylor watch this week. We've got some major stabs in the dark. We got to talk all about that ending and what's to come, if anything is to come. But what is definitely to come is us coming back to you in just a few minutes. Stick around. We'll be right back. Stabs in the dark. Okay. Kick us off, Lorraine. Where do you want to go with this? We got a lot of stabs in the dark.
Okay, so what is the name of the land where everyone goes when they're pruned?
Yes, the void at the end of time.
The void at the end. Okay, this is so sorry. Let me back up.
Okay, back it up.
So when the big explosion happens of time, there's three things maybe that have happened.
Can we just say real quick that was like shocking? The sound, you gotta like, I never say this kind of stuff, but the sound mixing for that moment when Victor like gets ripped apart is horrifyingly shocking. Mm-hmm. So well done. Sorry, go ahead.
So yes, so I'm thinking there's three potential possibilities that have happened with the big explosion, and they inform all of my theories. So option number one, all of time is destroyed. Option number two, the TVA is destroyed, but time goes on. Option number three, time is not destroyed. It's just in infinite branches now. And all the people in the TVA have been swallowed up into time, and they've all been split along different time branches. And Sylvia's going to have to use her fancy TIMPAD thing to get the gang back together to figure out, although she's not going to want to rebuild the TVA, so she's probably just going to be like, this is what I wanted all along.
I know that.
I won.
Right. It was definitely like the Sylvie's end game. Like this is what she wanted. Yeah. Albeit she had very little other than, really starting the whole process of killing He Who Remains. Ever since then, she hasn't had a whole lot of agency in it, but yeah. Okay. So let's go with the first one. All of existence is wiped out. It was great. We had fun. This was great.
Yeah. There was the MCU. Yeah. So many years.
Yep. And now it's gone. That's one concept.
So if that happens, the void at the end of time, I don't think that's destroyed. It's just a void at the end of time.
It exists outside of time. And we've seen that we saw that before. And as you're kind of alluding to, Renslayer, right before all this goes down, she did get pruned. And so we know where she is. And in fact, actually, that makes literally her She Who Remains. She is literally the only one who remains. So, called it.
Potentially, but Loki, we saw him prune himself. So when he prunes himself, does he go to the void at the end of time?
Because in that situation, remember, he had to be pruned at the exact moment for the thing that he and Mobius were doing. So that was more connected to that than it was Loki actually going to the end of time. Unless Loki experienced something between that moment and episode 1, which is possible, that Loki knows about, but the rest of us don't know about. It also might help explain how things changed so drastically between episodes 1 and 2, if that's the case. So that's possible. The only problem is you have to have a timeline for all of that to exist on, which we don't have, theoretically. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So if Renslayer's in the void at the end of time, she is going to have to rebuild the TVA because that's what she's after, thus restarting the whole thing, and then we go into the snake eating itself.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. So she's going to get there, right? So she's going to get the void at the end of time. She can run into a couple of different people or things while she's there. For one thing, we know that Kid Loki's still out there. We know that Loki the Bold, or Bold Loki, whatever he's called, is still out there. Old Loki, classic Loki, dead. Probably not, but it'd be cool if he comes back. A single-handed President Loki is potentially out there. We also know that Gator Loki is out there as well, aka the Superior Loki. We also know that Anais, or I think Anais or Annihilus. Eliath, thank you. Big Cloud Monster is out there. Cloud Monster might be a very interesting situation for Renslayer. We know now that Renslayer was part of the Multiversal War. She was on He Who Remains side. We know that He Who Remains was able to weaponize said Cloud Beast as a way of, conquering the Conqueror. And so from that standpoint, it stands to reason that Renslayer, maybe who she was before this, was the tamer of Anais.
So maybe, since her memory is wiped, she'll be at the void at the end of time, be like, what is this? What is that giant monster? She'll start running away, and it'll run faster and faster to her, and then it'll stop and be like, sit down and start panting.
Right,
just waiting for her
exactly.
to pet it.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, we have a history. We are best friends, and I'm going to use you to help me reconquer all of time.
Exactly. Or it also could be, so the last time that we saw it was when Sylvie enchanted it. So when Renslayer gets there, she could literally just see it kind of floating, kind of unconsciously around the void, and much like kind of picking the splinter out of the lion's paw, she might be able to somehow like nurse it back to health. I just think that there's going to be some sort of relationship there from either a previous point in her lack of memory, or something's going to be established that is going to give her a pretty significant edge on whatever happens next. That's my theory there. There's another factor that they made a big deal about, how by taking Miss Minutes offline and rebooting the TVA, the magic and meta dampeners are going to go away. And all we saw was Sylvie enchanting, Bradley, and that was it. I got to think that more either happened or can happen or will happen now that, the magic cuffs are off for both Lokis.
So you think the security protocols are still down?
I think so, yeah. Miss Minutes didn't come back.
I thought that once he rebooted, or when the system was down, it turned off the security, but when it came back up, when the power was back on.
Interesting.
Magic is now blocked.
It's possible. It's possible. I don't know. I just feel like they made such a big deal out of that, and then it was literally just Sylvie enchanting Bradley for 5 seconds. And
it took me on my second watch to realize when they're on the phone, and then he's like, no one will be able to do magic, and Loki and Sylvie look at each other and they're like, turn it off, speaking to each other, just like, oh, we can use magic for 5 minutes, turn it off.
All right, fair enough. Maybe you're right. So okay, this is I don't know that this is spoilery, but I do want to kind of acknowledge that I'm about to refer to some things that have been seen in previews for the next episode, right? So just with a grain of salt, or just to be aware before I say this, to kind of give people warning. In previews, we've seen Loki time slipping outside of the TVA, but we haven't really seen that happen yet. So I'm wondering if one of two things is possible. Either Loki could time slip right out of this explosion and go somewhere else on the timeline and kind of outrun the explosion. You know what I mean? So it's a blast radius. We saw the way in which the explosion was going down, and it's literally expanding. So theoretically, Loki could pop up at various points on the timeline before, the temporal wave hits, and kind of outrun it while trying to figure out what's going on. And along the way, we might actually see him getting the band back together so that he time slips to a jet ski salesman and grabs him, and the two time slip to, say, a somewhere where, Casey, where Casey is at bat. We don't know where he might be. You know, like, and we see him like time slipping and grabbing kind of the variants of all of these different people to potentially undo or at least land wherever things are after the explosion. I see the explosion as kind of your third theory, more of like a Big Bang type situation where everything's wiped out, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be replaced. I think everything is going to be replaced with a completely uncontrolled universe. No time loom, no TVA, or there's at least a TVA in like wreckage, that sort of thing. But there's no control. So there's just constant, infinite number of timelines, which means Kang, Multiversal War, that's going to happen, which we know it's going to happen anyway because spoilers, but Kang Dynasty is a movie that's going to be happening. So I'm like, you know, but this is the explanation for how we get from the sacred timeline to, you know, the Multiversal War. There is only the war.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I definitely see that happening.
And so I think that that's where we get, you know, when at the end of all things, I think we'll probably end up with Loki gathering the variants of all of our favorite friends from around the multi or from the TVA, and pulling them into the wreckage of whatever is left of the TVA afterwards to perhaps create, you know, to build something to harness and to put things back in order, which will come into play in Loki season 3 / at the end of the Kang Dynasty.
Putting things back into order, thus becoming the timekeepers.
Yes.
You
and
know,
thus
I really
ultimately becoming
Casey,
the God King that he was on a journey to become. Yeah.
I do ultimately hope that Casey gets, like, he becomes the savior of everyone, because season 1, he just was like, yeah, I'm just here, you know? But it's like, you really have this story coming for you. You just don't even know it yet.
Right.
You're going to save us all.
That's always good. That's nice. Okay. All right. Any other big stabs in the dark you want to make?
Well, I think this one's super far-fetched, but I'm going to make it anyways because, you know, it's a real stab in the dark. But okay, so if my theory that all of time is destroyed with the giant explosion, what's left? Nothing. So, the Watcher, has he come back? Has he been watching this whole thing and he's like, oh, goodness, it's all gone. I've got to do something about this. And he helps restart all of time.
Yes, I am 1,000% on board with this. I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't even think of it. This is so good. This is so good. This is not far-fetched in the least. Okay. The Watcher, of course, from What If. The concept is...
Oh, yes, from What If.
Yes, this is the concept is that this is a character who he watches from out of I can't, my voice is gone, so I can't do the actual accent. But the idea is that he actually is actively watching everything that's going on and is portrayed by the amazing Jeffrey Wright. Who right now is a major spokesperson for Uncle Nearest, which, by the way, the Uncle Nearest Black Bottle, have you had a chance to try it yet?
I have not.
Oh, it's so good. Delicious bourbon. But anyway, Jeffrey Wright, fantastic actor, voice actor, but also on-screen actor, which does kind of beg the question, could we, either next week or probably next week, see Jeffrey Wright portraying a live-action Watcher in Loki, because he's got nothing else to watch?
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna be so bored.
He's gonna call the cable company. Oh man, I wish I had my voice. Otherwise, I'd do a Jeffrey Wright impersonation, calling the cable company, calling the TVA. But basically, he's got nothing else to watch.
So is he gonna like go to the void at the end of time, get all the Lokis together, and say, "Hey guys, we gotta rebuild. We gotta figure this out."
What if Renslayer sees him at the end of time? Like, because think about it, the Watcher, like when the multiverse was being eradicated by Ultron, that's when the Watcher steps up.
Mm-hmm.
And in the comic books, there was always this thing, like he was always like, I'm the Watcher. I've taken a vow and I cannot do anything. I can only watch. But then he always does something. Like that's the thing. Like he could only watch until he can watch no more. And that's one of those situations where it's like,
he can watch literally no more. So he's got to do something.
He's got to do something. I think you're right. I think we're going to see Jeffrey Wright return as the Watcher live action next week. I think that's going to happen.
All right, there. You heard it here.
There you go. I'm with you.
It was a good stab in the dark.
1,000% with you on this stab in the dark. It is so good. It is so good. All right. Well, that's our take. We'd love to hear your thoughts. There's so much speculation to go into this next week's episode. Let us know your thoughts. You can email the show at LokiTVTalk.com is the place to do it. Again, that's show at LokiTVTalk.com. We have taken over the TV Talk Twitter, so follow at TV Talk FM on Twitter. Send us your Loki cosplay and costumes from this Halloween. We'd like to see what y'all are rocking, and we will share those out as well. If you want to hit us up on Instagram at Crew of Loki is the place to do it there as well. We will make you an honorary Loki for a day. Do that and send that over to at Crew of Loki on Instagram. That is going to do it for us for today. But until next time.
For all time. Always.
Or for no time. Never.
Never.
Never. Bye, everybody.